Morning everyone. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. I think we still have a few people joining, but in the interest of time we'll get underway. Firstly, thank you for attending this webinar today. This webinar is going to be focused on the changes to IR35 legislation that will be coming into the private sector from April 2020. Specifically, we're going to be looking a little bit around IR35 and what that's likely to mean, but we're going to be mainly focusing around what we're actually seeing in the marketplace amongst our clients and their approach and ideas around tackling this, and also specifically looking at a couple of solutions that can help to avoid any problems entirely. A little bit about me. I'm Ash Gawthorpe, one of the co-founding directors of Ten10. So my degree from a long time ago is in electronic engineering. I've then worked in hardware engineering, software development, architecture, technical testing, and nowadays I spend quite a lot of my time involved in pre-sales and in speaking with quite a number of our clients and our prospective clients out there, and this is an area that keeps coming up more and more of late, and organisations are really starting to be concerned around this and the impact that it will have on their business. Just one point I want to make here. As I stated, my background is in technology. I am not an accountant, nor am I a tax advisor, and so everything that we're going to be discussing in this is my view or the view of Ten10, but it should not be construed in any way around tax advice. This is an area which is very complicated, and in terms of the decisions and the impact, you really do need to take some professional tax advice in order to determine which direction you should be moving in. Just to summarise then, IR35 is a piece of tax legislation targeting tax avoidance by contractors operating via a limited company, which really should be classed as, and most importantly taxed like, a permanent employee of the end client they're working for. So essentially, if you're engaging a limited company contractor, working very much like a permanent employee of your company, as opposed to having more of a business-to-business relationship, then in the eyes of HMRC, taxes should be paid as if they are permanent employees rather than through a limited company dividend structure. IR35 has been around a good while now, since 2000, but due to numerous issues, it's now been replaced with the new off-payroll tax system, which was initially introduced into the public sector in April 2017, and most importantly for this webinar is to be extended into the private sector from April next year. So the big change in the public sector from the 6th of April 2017 was that the responsibility for determining the IR35 status of a contract, whether that person was inside or outside, shifted from the limited company contractors providing the service to the public sector end clients. At the 2018 budget, the Chancellor announced that the off-payroll rules will be extended to most private sector businesses from April 2020. These changes to IR35 legislation in the private sector from April 2020 are leading to many organisations to review their use of limited company contractors, mainly due to the potentially significant income tax and national insurance liabilities in the event that a contractor is deemed to be a disguised employee and found to be inside IR35. A point around the impact of this and why it's such a big issue for HMRC and the UK government, and I was really quite surprised at this. HMRC estimate that 90% of contracts are non-compliant with IR35 rules, and they also say that tax leakage from non-compliance is estimated at £700 million in 2017-2018, but crucially they expect that tax leakage to rise to approximately 1.2 billion in tax year 22-23 if this isn't addressed. So this has a potential to have a very great impact in the private sector, but firstly let's look a little bit historically and begin to have a look at how much of an impact did IR35 actually have in the public sector. HMRC estimates that the IR35 reform boosted revenues by approximately £400 million, but that's not necessarily the whole picture. According to a survey of over 400 IT freelancers by Contractor Calculator, 80% said the projects that they'd been working on were delayed as a result of contractors leaving. However, the overall number of freelancers leaving as a result of the changes is lower than previously thought, with 48% jumping ship. In previous surveys, more than 80% had threatened to walk away once the changes came into force. There's also a point that some consultancies have only managed to fill 15% of the vacancies, with more than half of the existing contractors yet to be replaced. Now, in my mind, what I think we saw was a large number of contractors, when this came into the public sector, actually jumping ship to the private sector. But obviously with these changes now coming into the private sector, then that removes that option to be able to move on from there. Further to that, a study was carried out by the Chartered Institute of Personal and Development and the Association of Independent Professionals and Self-Employed, which found that 4 out of 5 hiring managers said that they had seen a rise in workload to engage and pay contractors following IR35 coming into the public sector. So then, what do we think this means for the private sector? Following a survey of IT contractors by the recruitment firm Kudos Contractor, what they saw is that the main impact from the survey is likely to be an increase in contractor rates. The feedback they received was that if contractors are paying the same in tax as permanent employees, then they expect to be compensated to match the employee benefits which they do not currently receive. And also one of the other biggest concerns about the potential extension of the IR35 reform into the private sector is that the tools and information required for clients to make an informed choice have been widely criticised, particularly the online employment status tool. And if penalties for making an incorrect employment status determination replicate those in the public sector, then it's likely that we'll see more and more organisations in the private sector opt to make blanket inside IR35 decisions. Essentially then, it comes down to whether the contract is determined to be inside or outside IR35. And if you deem a contract to be outside IR35, but subsequently it's found to be inside, then there are potential significant income tax and national insurance liabilities in the event that that contractor is deemed to be a disguised employee and found to be inside IR35. Alternatively, if you declare a contract to be inside IR35, then there's financial impact on the take-home pay of the contractor, and broadly we're seeing a few different options at this point. If the day rate stays the same, then the contractor will take home less money. Now obviously that varies according to how much they earn, but when you sort of analyse the different tax implications, it's of the order of sort of greater than 10%, that's sort of 13%. And so if the contractor wants to take home the same amount of money, then this increases costs by more than 20%. Alternatively, if the day rate remains the same, then this results in an increase of 13% paid by the client as a national insurance contribution. This is an interesting quote. I guess it is quite gloomy, but I first came across this when back in 2018, when the discussions were going ahead around moving IR35 into the private sector. We had Brexit, a lot of uncertainty around that as well, and I kind of hoped that by this point in time there'd be a lot more clarity on both of those issues. Unfortunately, that's not the case, and in actual fact we have even less clarity with the general election coming up early now in December. So I think there are still significant headwinds, stronger than before in fact. There's still a lot of unknowns. We were experiencing lack of good available resources with the skills we needed anyway in the market. And so I think that's just going to become more acute. What then are we actually seeing and hearing in the marketplace? So this is across the sort of more than 70 or 80 clients that we're actively engaged with, and a whole lot more that we are speaking with on a fairly regular basis. I've summarised a few points here, but these are kind of, I guess, key themes and key kind of sort of sentiments that organisations are feeling about there. So in the case of the first one, organisations that rely on having a large contractor base, but they've received essentially a command from the finance teams saying that you have those contractors at the moment, but by April it's just far too risky to have those contractors on the team. And so people are looking for options in order to see what they can do to remove those contractors. And one key approach here is to sort of try and make some of the most valuable and most indispensable contractors permanent employees. But the challenge around that is, what sort of salary should I offer them? And what would happen if I actually offered them a salary which meant that it would come somewhere near to matching their take-home pay under the current scenarios, which obviously is higher than most other Permi employees. What impact would that have on everybody in the business to have a number of people's salaries higher than other people's, for example? We're seeing a number of organisations that are essentially saying that if they are going to continue with contractors, then they are just going to declare everybody to be inside IR35. Anything else is too risky. And so off the back of that decision, you then have the questions in the earlier slide around what sort of change in day rates or change in sort of take-home pay for the contractor would be likely to be required in order to secure them and keep them. And then equally, we're also seeing a number of organisations where they're actually turning this on its head a little bit and looking at this as a bit of an opportunity. Where maybe in the past they've hired contractors for short-term reasons, perhaps at a time to reduce risk when maybe they were struggling to hire permanently, or they weren't quite sure of where the business was going and whether there'd be a long-term demand for them at that point. However, what seems to happen is that a lot of organisations end up retaining those contractors for longer than they ever envisaged, and I think they see now that it's also risky to retain them, then they see this as an opportunity to hire permanent staff or to convert contractors to permanent staff, to be able to retain that knowledge and improve the company culture as a whole. So strategically they're able to move forward with a large, cohesive, permanent team. In summary then of what we're seeing other organisations doing, we seem to be seeing a three-pronged approach, essentially offering permanent roles to the most valuable and indispensable of those contractors, but then there's that question mark of how much do you offer them? Will they accept it? What's the impact on the permanent workforce if you end up having to offer them higher salaries than they're on in order to remain? The other option is then trying to hire quickly permanent employees into that that middle tier filled by contractors at the moment. And thirdly, look to alternative IR35 proof resourcing solutions which can work around some of these issues and essentially just remove that uncertainty and that risk. Let's just take a second to compare the advantages and disadvantages of contractors versus permanent staff. So in terms of the advantages, I think the first main one is that contractors fulfill short-term staffing needs. They provide flexibility, the ability to ramp up and down without overhead. They can also provide specialist skills, although often speaking with organisations, the intention there is to have them bring those specialist skills for a limited period of time and then hand over those skills to permanent members of staff. However, often we see that doesn't happen in the way that it was originally envisaged, and you can have contractors remaining in the business for a long period of time and not being able to hand those skills over. You're also able to avoid the expense of selecting, hiring and training new employees, which can be significant, and also in where you may have a sluggish economy, where a downturn may necessitate laying employees off, it might be better to offset that risk traditionally through hiring temps or independent contractors instead. And then the last point here, to lessen or reduce the expense of employee turnover. Independent contractors and temps also allow your business to try out people before committing to hire them in some cases as well. So from a disadvantages point of view, they may cost the business more than the employee equivalent day rate. And then that point before, that permanent staff sometimes resent contractors' presence, particularly if they're being paid more for doing similar work. Contractors sometimes, but not always, in our experience, may not appreciate the culture within your business, and sometimes they may lack the motivation or commitment of members of permanent staff. And I think lastly on this slide, but by no means least, you have that risk around knowledge retention when a contractor leaves, especially if you've had to invest and train them in your own products and sometimes help upskill them. Now that shouldn't be the case, but we do find that often is the case when an organisation hires contractors. Are there any alternative solutions then which can be used to almost combine the best of these worlds? A solution which is flexible, which allows people to quickly onboard and offboard, but that also allows knowledge to be retained and to be able to grow your permanent team, but also, and most importantly, gets around or avoids entirely this whole issue around IR35 and the risk and uncertainty associated with it. So in summary, the answer to that question is yes, and this is a solution that we've been working with for our clients for a number of years now, essentially, but that's coming very much more into the focus and into the limelight following these changes to IR35 legislation. Our main solution to the IR35 challenge relies around our graduate academy. So this isn't a new program. This is a program that we've been running since 2013, originally as a means of hiring emerging talent into our own consulting teams. And we took the decision a couple of years ago to modify this to allow our academy grads to be placed directly with clients, and also to allow our clients, after a period of time, to permanently hire them into their own business to grow their own technical capability internally, and also to negate some of those issues around retention of knowledge with contractors. So in this way, the Ten10 Academy helps you overcome those technical resourcing challenges by providing very bright, very passionate, and very technically adept young talent into the business. So this covers a number of areas. So we have in-depth training across the latest technologies, methodologies and tools, and our academy engineers fulfill roles of test analysts, SDETs, DevOps engineers, developers and business analysts. To give you an idea of scale, historically we've brought in 100 grads per year, but in the next financial year we're looking to double that to 200 grads due to client demand. We bring them in as cohorts of 20 at a time, and to get a cohort of 20 we start off with around 1,500 applicants. So it's quite a rigorous process. We hire on attitude and aptitude for technology, but also on personality and cultural fit. We feel that a long time ago the days are gone where a person with excellent technical skills can get away without being able to work, for example, collaboratively in a team or to communicate well. So as a result of this diversity, this has also yielded some stats that we're really very proud of. So to date, over 30% of individuals that we've taken through the academy have been women, more than 40% have identified as BAME, and also nearly 60% of our grads have also come from non-STEM backgrounds. That's by design. We hire for technical aptitude, and the training that we put them through is rigorous and intensive, and also we're able to objectively assess their progress throughout. And it's a source of concern for me that the UK education system forces individuals to specialise at such an early age, which means that you have somebody who's maybe as young as 14 makes decisions around their choice of subjects, which can preclude them from being able to have a career in technology. There's nothing quite like seeing somebody with, say, a history degree who's it's the first time they've ever been exposed to programming or coding, and within a couple of weeks they're actually outperforming and out-accelerating somebody with say a 2-1 in computer science in terms of their ability to code and their ability to sort of make those kind of leaps of faith and well, not leaps of faith, but rather sort of leaps of knowledge, to be able to look at different things and to be able to put them together in different ways, and to just be far more effective as a developer. I don't want to dwell too long on this, so just in summary then, the 1010 Academy provides permanent 1010 employees with no IR35 implications. We bring in junior, bright, emerging talent with a high level of technical aptitude through a rigorous selection process, as I mentioned, going from 1,500 applicants down to 20 in a classroom. It's an intensive training program specialising in specific tech roles guided by aptitude. So everybody does the same initial course, and then we work out throughout that initial 6-week course where people's strengths lie, and then we focus them on targeted specific roles after that point. Flexible hiring, so you're able to try before you buy, and you don't have those restrictions and risks around hiring people permanently. It's more cost effective than contractors. And we have a number of case studies where we have had our academy engineers placed in specific roles working alongside experienced contractors, and after a period of time the client has been able to not renew those contractors' contracts and just have the roles fulfilled by our 1010 Academy engineers. After the initial training, they're supported by a dedicated pastoral care team to sort of look after them and to ensure their well-being, and we also provide them with career development. So this is practical sort of upskilling, aligned with what they're looking to do themselves, but also aligned to your own technology roadmap. And then finally, that option but not an obligation to hire and become a permanent member of your team, addressing those challenges around knowledge retention with contractors. I'd like to spend a minute just talking about another option that we have within 1010, and this is what we call our hybrid model. So our hybrid delivery model combines 1010's engineering services with our flexible resourcing models provided through the Academy. Along with working directly for end customers, as I mentioned previously, so grads from our 1010 Academy can also work with 1010's engineering practice as part of wider and more experienced teams. So this combines the delivery of effective consultancy and services, but with a longer term resourcing and capability solution. It also provides the cost benefits of engaging highly capable graduate resources, whilst balancing this with the experience and support of more senior consultants. So our hybrid model addresses your immediate delivery challenges and requirements, while providing you with the sought after skills to build a longer term in-house capability. So in today's challenging market, this helps our clients overcome availability and budget challenges commonly associated with sourcing and retaining appropriate talent. Where a 1010 Academy graduate forms part of a consulting team delivering a long-term service to a customer, 1010's Consulting Academy hybrid model refers to the potential for our customer, in the same way as with the standard Academy model, to be able to offer the grad a permanent role after a period of time. So this ensures continuity, capability, and also ensures that knowledge remains whilst the wider 1010 consultancy services team have completed their work and moved off site. The model also allows customers to engage 1010's graduate resources as a longer term resourcing solution where you may not have the expertise or capacity to support the grads directly yourself within your own organisation. And of course, last but by no means least, this model is provided entirely by permanent employees of 1010. Therefore, there are no issues with IR35 around using this solution. In summary then, IR35 is due to apply to the private sector in April 2020, and organisations have already started to see an impact of this during the course of 2019. Whilst this deadline is quickly approaching, there is still a lot of uncertainty around the practicalities of implementation and what this will actually mean in practice. So this could lead to a number of things, and in fact we're starting to see some of these already. So this could in turn lead to more contractors entering the market for permanent software testing roles. That could drive up salaries and ultimately costs of delivery of IT change rise. There's still significant risk and unknowns around declaring contractors as outside IR35, but it's worth mentioning and pointing out that alternative solutions do exist that remove any risk associated with IR35, and these are worth investigating and having a look at. In terms of recommendations, 3 points here. If you are reliant on contractors in your teams, we recommend you carry out a contractor audit to understand the potential impact that IR35 may have. You should compile a skills matrix for your team and perform a gap analysis. So do you have the right skill set in your teams at the moment from within your permanent headcount to future-proof your product roadmap? And where you do find you have gaps, consider alternative resourcing models. So look for a solution that can cost-effectively provide you with the technical talent required whilst removing that risk around IR35. I was hoping to be able to run through some questions that we've received, but I'm afraid I think in order to run to time, we're going to have to move over this section. What I will say is that everybody who has asked a question, we promise that we will respond to everybody who has asked directly. Okay, thanks. Okay, I think that's about all we have time for today. So it just remains for me to say thank you very much for attending today. I hope that's been useful. The next webinar that we're running around this subject will be on the 17th of December at 10:30, and a similar theme really, private sector IR35, worried about a world without contractors. But this one is more focused around IT practitioners, so people who are running those IT change projects, and also focusing mainly around that sort of that hybrid model that I mentioned earlier, and how that can be implemented practically to be able to allow you to deliver those projects and those programs of work without requiring IT contractors. Okay, well, thanks very much, and I hope you enjoy your day, and I look forward to catching up soon. Thanks, bye.